Miami is a really fun team to watch. Best offense in the nation. Only lost 2 games by combined 9 points. You'd think that'd be good enough. Unfortunately, it wasn't. It's a huge bummer, and this season should feel better to me, but it doesn't.
I will tell you again, it's a made-for-television event, and while I would want to watch the best offense in the sport and Cam Ward play one more game, the nation will have its regard for Alabama, and there's a whole generation that doesn't have any understanding that Miami used to be good. An entire generation, 20 years. So
Yeah.
Alabama is getting a Lifetime Achievement Award on a made-for-television event because the argument I would make, and Jessica, you tell me if you think I have this wrong, because at the time that Northern Illinois beat Notre Dame, I said to myself, even not knowing anything because it was too early in the season, okay, that's a giant upset. That's probably the biggest upset there's going to be in the sport this year, winning at Notre Dame. It was the most confusing result of the season, but it was so early that I'm like, okay, well, Notre Dame must not be good if that's happening. I still don't have a sample on who everyone is. I've got a sample on Alabama. And the most confusing result to me this season, I didn't see the game. How the hell did Alabama lose that way to Oklahoma? How was the offense neutralized? What don't I know about the importance of Nick Saban's coaching that would make it so that Alabama and that quarterback, that Milroe wouldn't be able to do anything in a game against a terrible Oklahoma team? Where were the most confusing results of the season? Because that one I just didn't understand. And it was so recent that I can't believe they got forgiven for it, even though Alabama's been forgiven for any number of losses over the last few years, just because people know to put them on television.
I mean, I completely agree with you about the Oklahoma game. I think that like we talked about Alabama's ceiling being they can beat Georgia. Their floor is a lot lower than it's been in the last 10 years because that game was really bad. 3 points against Oklahoma at the end of the season is a just horrendous offensive output for Alabama, for any team. But I think that Alabama may not make it, right? Because if Clemson wins, SMU is probably going to get, the spot. Clemson's going to get the bye week probably with the ACC championship game. So Alabama may not make it. And I think, and I could be totally wrong about this, but I think that if you explain to an Alabama fan, you didn't make it because of the Oklahoma loss, they're probably going to nod their head and be like, you know what? Right. That makes sense. Just like if you told me in September, or, I guess like the better example is like if Notre Dame lost to USC this past weekend, Notre Dame goes into that game knowing they're playing Southern Cal on the road. It's their rival. If they lose, they're not going to make the playoff at 10-2 because they have the Northern Illinois loss. And if you told me that and it happened, I would agree with you. Notre Dame should not make the playoff as a 2-loss team with the Northern Illinois loss. But they went into that game knowing we have to win and we're in because this will be an 11-1 season. There's not enough 11-win teams to overcome that. And so this is a win-and-you're-in situation. It's the same thing for Miami playing at Syracuse. Miami knew they had to win that conference game to make the ACC championship game. It was a play-in game for the playoff, and Miami had the lead. They had a chance to tie it late in the game, and they couldn't finish it. And that's, I think, the difference between 11-1, 10-2, and 9-3 right there.
Yeah, but I also think is that people were watching the end of that game, and people must not have been watching what happened in Oklahoma, Alabama, because you can't know what happened in that game and say to me that that's a team that deserves to be among the 12 best.
Yeah, but you can watch them play against Georgia and Tennessee and LSU and say that team could win the national championship.
They move the goalposts because it's convenient. It's convenient when September doesn't matter. And part of the argument that Lucy was making on behalf of the SEC, I think she was arguing more for South Carolina. I think we all know that South Carolina's out because they lost to Alabama, and that confuses the process. Because head-to-head has to matter. Alabama beat Georgia in September. What they did recently was put up 3 points against one of the worst Oklahoma teams of our lifetime. That happened 11 days ago. And
they also beat Mercer.
So they climb up 3 spots because they beat Mercer, and they beat an Auburn team by 2 scores, I guess. It's a bummer. It's a huge bummer, but we knew that if it got into a situation where you're parsing the difference between Alabama and Miami, Alabama's going to win that tiebreaker because of all the SEC stuff.